What did your parents say to you as a kid that still affects you today? Growing up, my mom used to tell me about my twin sister who died during childbirth. She'd say things like, "You two were meant to be a pair," how lucky I was to survive, how sometimes when I acted out, she could tell it was my sister's wild streak showing through me. That started when I was around 5. She kept this tiny lavender baby hat in a special box and would bring it out to show me. She said they bought matching ones, green for me, lavender for her. My dad never talked about it. He'd just get quiet whenever Mom brought it up. Mom used to tell me how twins shared a special connection. She'd ask if I ever felt lonely for no reason or like something or someone was missing. And honestly, I did. I always did. I grew up with this ache like there was supposed to be someone beside me and she wasn't there. Every year on my birthday, we'd go to this quiet little memorial garden where Mom said they'd scattered my sister's ashes. We leave flowers and a tiny toy. I sit there and talk to her in my head while Mom cried silently. It became our ritual, just me and her. Dad never came. When I was 12, I found Mom sobbing in the bathroom clutching that little lavender hat. I asked her what my sister's name would have been. She told me, Elise. She said they chose it because it was my grandmother's name, and it matched mine, Clara and Elise. It felt so real having a name for her. My dad left when I was 16. He and Mom had been fighting more and more. He drank a lot. The night before he left, I overheard them arguing, Dad yelling that things had gone too far, that it wasn't right, Mom crying, saying she was protecting me, protecting us. I'm 24 now. I haven't spoken to my dad in years. Mom told me he moved to New Mexico and started a new family. I believed her. Why wouldn't I? Last month, I got a Facebook friend request from someone named Elise Donovan. The profile photo showed a woman who looked exactly like me. I thought it was some kind of twisted prank. I almost blocked her. But then she messaged me. "I think you might be my sister. I've been adopted at birth. I've been looking for my birth family." I called my mom screaming, demanding answers. She hung up, wouldn't answer my calls for days. I messaged Elise back. We video chatted. It was like looking into a mirror. She had the same birthmark on her left shoulder that I do, the same double-jointed thumbs, the same laugh. She told me she'd been raised in Washington by a kind couple. They were open with her about the adoption. When she turned 22, she requested her records and learned she'd been born a twin. She'd been searching for me ever since. I didn't want to believe it. How could it be true? How could my whole life be built on a lie like this? I drove to my mom's house. I hadn't been there in months. We usually just talked on the phone. But when I got there, the place was empty. The neighbor said she'd packed up and left 3 days earlier. No forwarding address. I was losing my mind. I called my mom's sister, Aunt Rachel. She wouldn't talk, just said it was complicated and not her story to tell. I was desperate. I did something I never thought I'd do. I tracked down my dad. It took some digging, but I found him working at a repair shop in Tucson. I called. A man answered, and I knew his voice instantly, even after all those years. I asked if he was Thomas. He went silent. I told him who I was. He started crying. Then he told me everything. How my mom had severe postpartum psychosis after the birth. How the doctors urged hospitalization, but she refused. How she became obsessed with the idea that having twins was dangerous, that one of us would hurt the other, that she threatened to hurt herself or us if Dad didn't fix it. He thought it was temporary. He thought they'd get her help, then bring Elise home. But things got worse. Mom became convinced Elise was evil, that she'd harm me. Dad realized she'd never get better if both babies were around. He made a decision. He arranged for Elise to be adopted by an old friend and his wife, Daniel and Sophia. They'd moved to Washington and had been hoping to adopt. He thought it would be for a little while, a few months, maybe a year. But then Mom started telling this story about Elise dying at birth, and she believed it, completely. She got better when she believed it. The doctor said confronting her delusion could make things worse.
I was shaking so hard, I could barely hold the phone. My entire childhood, all those birthdays at the Memorial Garden, all those nights I cried myself to sleep missing someone I thought was gone, they were built on a lie. A lie made because my mom was sick, and my dad was too weak to protect both of us. Dad was still talking. He said he'd tried to stay in touch with Daniel and Sophia over the years, just to know Elise was okay, but Mom found out and threatened to hurt herself if he didn't stop. She became convinced he was planning to bring Elise back and take me away. That's why the fighting got so bad before he left. He couldn't handle the lies anymore, but he was terrified of what Mom might do if he told me the truth. I asked him why he never came back for me. He went quiet. So long I thought he'd hung up. Then finally, he said he tried, but Mom had filed a restraining order against him, said he was abusive, that she had proof of violent outbursts and threats. All lies. But he couldn't fight it. He was scared if he pushed, she'd vanish with me completely. I hung up and just sat there in my car staring at nothing. My phone buzzed nonstop with messages from Elise. She was worried about me. My sister was worried about me. My sister who was alive, who had been alive this whole time. I drove back to my apartment in a daze. I couldn't process any of it. Flashes of childhood kept running through my mind. Mom holding that lavender hat, crying. Me talking to Elise in that memorial garden. That hollow ache I carried for years. It wasn't grief for a lost sister. It was the actual absence of my living twin. When I got home, there was an envelope taped to my door. No return address, just my name. Inside was a letter from my mom. The handwriting was shaky, barely recognizable. Clara, by the time you read this, I'll be gone. I'm sorry for what I did to you, to your sister, to our family. I truly believed I was protecting you. In my mind, she was going to hurt you. The doctors called it psychosis, but to me, it was as real as you are. Even now, knowing she's found you, I feel the panic coming back. I can't face what I've done. I can't face her. I'm sorry. I had no other choice. I called the police immediately. The tone of the letter terrified me. They took the report, but didn't sound too concerned, said adults have the right to disappear. They'd check a few things, but not to expect much. That night, Elise and I stayed on video chat for hours. We compared stories, memories, childhoods. She had good parents, a normal upbringing, but she said she always felt that same inexplicable emptiness I had until she got her adoption records. I couldn't stop staring at her, at my face on someone else. It was surreal and beautiful and painful all at once. But as we talked, something else started bothering me. That lavender hat. Mom had kept it for years. If Elise didn't die, where had it come from? Why did Mom have it? I asked Elise about it. She went quiet, then said, "When I turned 18, my parents gave me a green baby hat. They told me it was what I was wearing when they brought me home." I felt sick. If Elise had the green hat and Mom had the lavender one, did that mean she'd switched our identities? Was I actually Elise? Was Clara a lie too? I couldn't sleep that night. My mind kept circling back to Mom's letter. That strange line, "I had no other choice." What did she mean? Where was she? What was she planning? The next morning, I got a call from a hospital 2 hours away. They'd found my mom. She'd checked in under a false name and taken a large dose of sleeping pills. They'd managed to save her, but she was refusing to see me. The doctor said she was extremely agitated. She kept repeating that she had to finish what she started and protect Clara before it's too late. I have no idea what to do. Elise is driving down from Washington to meet me tomorrow. Mom is in the psych ward, still convinced, after all these years, that my twin is somehow dangerous. Dad won't stop calling, asking if Mom's okay. My whole life has been shaped by my mom's stories. Stories about a dead sister who never died. Grief rituals, empty spaces, all based on a delusion so strong that it fractured everything around it. And now, I don't even know if I am who I think I am. I need to see my mom. I need answers. I need to know who I really am. And I'm terrified of what will happen when Elise and I walk into that hospital together. Update. I didn't sleep at all after finding out Mom was in the hospital. I kept thinking that line in her letter, "I had no other choice," wouldn't stop echoing in my head. The doctors told me she was physically stable but in a severe mental crisis. They had her on suicide watch and heavily sedated. I spent the entire day before Elise arrived pacing my apartment, chain smoking on the balcony, a habit I'd quit 3 years ago but suddenly desperately needed. I couldn't concentrate. My hands kept scrolling through Elise's photos on my phone, comparing them to mine. We weren't just similar, we were identical. The same person in different clothes. How had Mom maintained this lie for 24 years? How broken does a mind have to be to convince itself that one of its children is dead? Dad kept calling. Sometimes I answered. Sometimes I let it ring. He was frantic, begging me to keep him updated about Mom. I was furious with him. I could barely speak through the rage. 24 years. He let this happen for 24 years. I know he was in an impossible position with Mom's illness, but he left me there. He left me alone, with a woman so far gone she invented a dead twin and raised me in the shadow of that fantasy. I told him Elise was coming. He broke down crying again, asked if he could come too. I told him not yet. I couldn't handle both reunions at once. I needed to meet my sister first. Even saying the words felt foreign in my mouth. My sister. I'd spent my life talking to a ghost, and now she was driving down Interstate 5 to meet me. Elise arrived just past noon the next day. I was standing in the apartment parking lot when her car pulled in. We'd agreed to meet there instead of at the hospital. We needed a moment, just the two of us. I saw her through the windshield, and my heart actually stopped. She parked and stepped out slowly, like any sudden movement might send me running. We just stared at each other. It was like looking into a mirror that breathed, blinked, and had tears on its face. Neither of us moved. Seconds or minutes passed. I'm not sure. Then she whispered my name, and something inside me cracked. I don't remember who moved first. Suddenly we were hugging, sobbing, laughing, wrapped around each other like we'd been waiting for that moment all our lives. Her arms around me felt like coming home to a place I'd never been. She smelled like me, but not. Different shampoo, different detergent, but beneath that, the same. Exactly the same. We went up to my apartment and just talked for hours. We compared everything. Our favorite foods, both hate olives. Allergies, both break out from cheap metal. Weird habits, we both sleep with a pillow between our knees. We pulled out our driver's licenses and laughed at how wildly different our signatures were. Hers neat and loopy, mine a chaotic scribble. It was like finding the other half of myself. All those years of feeling incomplete, turns out it wasn't grief. It was the literal absence of a part of me. But underneath the joy, rage simmered. Every time I looked at Elise, I thought about what Mom had stolen from us. The birthdays, the inside jokes, the fights and forgiveness, the twin pranks we never pulled, the life we were supposed to share. All taken away because Mom's fractured mind believed one of us was dangerous. That evening, we decided to visit Mom. The hospital had called to say she was more lucid, though still refusing to see me. They thought maybe if I showed up in person, she might agree to talk. They didn't know I was bringing her greatest fear with me. On the way, Elise told me more about Ricardo and Sophia, the couple who raised her. They sounded wonderful, steady, loving. They'd moved back to Oregon from Mexico shortly before the adoption. They had no idea about Mom's condition. Dad had only told them that he and Mom couldn't care for both babies for personal reasons. They'd stayed in occasional contact with Dad over the years, until Mom found out. Elise had found Dad first, about 6 months earlier. That's how she got my name and found me online. Dad had begged her to wait, said he needed time, said Mom had to be the one to tell me. But Elise had waited long enough. She needed to know her twin. I couldn't blame her. At the hospital, we decided she'd wait in the car while I went in first. We didn't want to send Mom into a tailspin right away. The psychiatric unit was bleak. Beige walls, harsh fluorescent lights, the sterile smell of disinfectant barely masked something sour underneath. A nurse led me to Mom's room and warned me she was fragile. Mom looked small in the bed. Her hair was matted, her face pale. An IV in one arm, restraint cuffs on both wrists, though not currently in use. It was all part of hospital protocol after a suicide attempt, the nurse explained. Mom started crying the second I walked in, whispering that she was sorry, that she never meant for me to find out this way. I sat in the chair beside her bed, my heart pounding so hard I could feel it in my teeth. I wanted to scream at her, to shake her until something snapped into place, but she already looked so broken. I asked her one word, why? She turned away from me, staring at the wall like she couldn't bear to look. She said the doctors had tried to explain it over the years. Postpartum psychosis, delusions, paranoid thinking, but none of it could capture how real it felt to her, even now. She said she could still close her eyes and see baby Elise's face twisted in fury. Said she saw her tiny hands reaching for my throat. I felt physically ill hearing it. She talked about waking up in the middle of the night and seeing Elise standing over my crib, even though Elise wasn't there. Said the voices told her only one twin could survive. That's how it worked with identicals. One always tried to consume the other. I asked her about the baby hats. The green one Elise had. The lavender one Mom had kept. She looked confused. Said they'd always been that way. Green for Clara, lavender for Elise. I was Clara. Elise was Elise. At least she hadn't switched our identities. That, at least, was a small relief. I took a deep breath and told her Elise was here. She went completely still, like a deer catching the scent of something it already knew was hunting it. Then she started screaming. Not words, just this piercing, high-pitched sound that made my blood go cold. She thrashed so violently the IV in her arm ripped out. Blood splattered across the white hospital sheets. Nurses rushed in. They pulled me out of the room while she screamed about the evil one coming to kill me. Said she had to protect me. Said she'd rather die than let Elise near me. I stumbled back to the car, barely able to see straight. Elise was waiting. She took one look at my face and started crying. I told her what happened. We sat in the car, gripping each other's hands across the center console, while Mom's screams rang in my ears like sirens I couldn't shut off. The next morning, the hospital called. Mom was awake but heavily sedated. She was asking for me, just me. The doctor warned me her delusion about Elise was deeply fixed. Seeing the real Elise might cause irreversible psychological damage. He strongly advised against it. Elise and I talked it through back at the apartment. She was hurt but understood. She'd waited 24 years to find me. She could wait a little longer for Mom. We agreed I'd go alone, try to talk to her calmly, try to see if any part of her could still be reached. When I arrived, they'd moved her to a different room. No windows, nothing sharp or breakable. She looked almost normal, just tired, sad. When she saw me, she reached for my hand. She told me she loved me, that everything she had done was to protect me. I tried to stay calm. I told her Elise wasn't dangerous, that she was kind, gentle, that all she wanted was to know her mother. Her face darkened. Her voice turned cold. She said I didn't understand that Elise would seem perfect at first. That was how it worked. She'd make me trust her, love her, and then she'd destroy me. I asked her how she could possibly know that. Elise had been taken away as a newborn. Mom said she just knew, that mothers know these things, that twins were special, one good, one evil. It had always been that way. History proved it. Mythology, dreams. It was like talking to someone trapped in another dimension. Every time I tried reason, she threw back some bizarre twin folklore she'd invented and lived in for 20.5 decades. This wasn't just a story she told. This was her world. Before she left, she grabbed my arm and whispered, "If I let Elise into your life, one of you will end up dead." She said she saw it in her dreams, me lying in a pool of blood, Elise standing over me, or worse, Elise dead, and me changed, my soul gone, replaced by something else, something dark. I walked out of the hospital feeling like I'd been hollowed out. How do you reason with that level of delusion? How do you bridge a gap between her world and the real one? Elise and I spent the next few days getting to know each other. We went through photo albums, comparing moments from our childhoods. She showed me videos. I met Ricardo and Sophia over video chat. They looked stunned by everything, but were kind, supportive, clearly good people. They had no idea about Mom's condition. They told me
They said Dad had told them it was a private adoption, that he and Mom couldn't handle twins. Nothing more. Dad kept calling, asking if he could come see us both, but I wasn't ready. My anger toward him kept flaring up like a burn I couldn't soothe. He should have fought harder. He should have found a way to keep us together, or at the very least, told me the truth years ago. Part of me understood the impossible situation he'd been in, but another part couldn't forgive him for leaving me with her, for allowing me to grow up speaking to a patch of earth in a memorial garden that held nothing but flowers and lies. The hospital called again yesterday. Mom was refusing to eat. She was convinced Elise had poisoned her food. The doctor asked if I'd come talk to her. Maybe I could calm her down. Maybe I could get her to eat. I went alone again. Mom looked worse. Her face had hollowed out, her eyes darting around like she expected something to launch from the corners. She whispered that Elise was in the hospital somewhere, that she could sense her. I told her Elise was at my apartment, safe. Mom started crying. She begged me not to go back there, said it wasn't safe, said Elise had gotten into my head already. I tried a different approach. I showed her photos of me and Elise together. I wanted her to see us, the way we smiled, the way we mirrored each other. I wanted her to see how happy I looked. But she wouldn't even glance at the screen. She squeezed her eyes shut, shaking her head hard. I told her about the little things Elise and I had in common, our allergies, our habits, the odd, uncanny traits we shared, how it felt to finally meet the person I'd been mourning my whole life. That got her attention. She opened her eyes and looked at me with a sadness that made my chest ache. Then she said quietly that she had failed, that she had tried so hard to keep us apart, to save me, but in the end she couldn't stop it. She asked me to forgive her for what she had to do next. I didn't understand what she meant, not then. Now I do. After I left, Mom convinced a nurse she was feeling better. She ate, took her meds, smiled a little, seemed calm. They relaxed the protocol just slightly during shift change. She got out. By the time they realized she was missing, she had already left the hospital entirely. The police are looking for her now. They came by the apartment, took her description. Elise and I are staying at a hotel. The officers didn't say it outright, but the implication was clear. Mom might try to hurt one or both of us. Elise is asleep in the bed beside mine as I type this. I keep looking over at her, still barely able to believe she's real. Still not quite able to process that my entire childhood was built on a lie so colossal it warped everything. Dad is driving up tomorrow. I finally agreed to see him. We all need to come together now, figure out what to do, how to find Mom, how to stop her from doing something we can't undo. I'm scared. I'm scared of what might happen when we find her. I'm scared of what she might do. But mostly, I'm scared that when I look at her now, I don't see my mother anymore. I see a stranger who stole half my life, and who still might take more. Last update, Dad showed up at the hotel early the next morning. I hadn't seen him in 8 years. He looked older, his hair almost fully gray, deep lines carved into his face. Elise answered the door while I hung back by the window. I watched them embrace like they'd known each other forever, even though they hadn't. She had grown up without him, yet they fit, somehow. I stayed frozen, unable to make my feet move. We sat in that bland hotel room trying to figure out where Mom might have gone. Dad thought maybe she'd head to the memorial garden.
That place she'd built her whole fantasy around. The place where she believed Elise's ashes were buried. It had always been her refuge, her sanctuary of sorrow. Elise asked about other meaningful places from our childhood. I mentioned the old cabin we used to rent in the summers before Dad left. Mom had loved it. She used to say it was the only place she felt truly at peace. Dad's face shifted when I said that. He told us they had actually owned the cabin once, early in their marriage. But they sold it when Mom got pregnant with us. They needed the money to prepare for twins. Still, Mom had always dreamed of buying it back. On a hunch, Dad called the current owners. Turned out they were an elderly couple who only used the place during hunting season. The rest of the year it sat empty. Dad asked if anyone had been up there recently. The owner said he didn't think so. They only check in every couple of months. We decided to drive up, 3 hours north, into the mountains. The police had already checked Mom's apartment, her usual haunts, even the memorial garden. Nothing. We gave them the cabin address and left. The drive was tense. Dad kept trying to explain himself, justify everything. How he'd been young, how Mom's psychosis had blindsided him, how the doctors had told him separating the twins might only be temporary, just long enough for her to stabilize. How, by the time he realized,
Mom was never going to accept reality. She'd already built this whole elaborate story about Elise dying. The doctors had warned Dad that confronting her delusion head-on could cause a full psychotic break, one that might put everyone in danger. I understood that, intellectually. But emotionally, I couldn't stop thinking about all those birthdays spent in the memorial garden, all those nights I whispered to a sister I thought was dead, that aching emptiness that had shaped my identity from the inside out. Elise was quieter than I expected, thoughtful. Sometimes she'd ask Dad questions about their time in Mexico before they moved back to the States, about his old friendship with Sophia and Ricardo. Not accusing, just trying to piece together the truth. The cabin was exactly how I remembered it from childhood. Small, wooden, isolated at the end of a dirt road, surrounded by dense trees. Dad told us to stay in the car while he went in first, but I didn't listen. This wasn't just his to deal with. It was mine. It was Elise's, especially hers. The cabin door was unlocked. Inside, it was dark and stale. The furniture was different from when I was a kid, but the layout was the same. Every step brought back memories and unease. Mom wasn't in the main room or kitchen. I called out her name softly. No answer. We found her in the back bedroom, sitting on the floor surrounded by scattered papers and old photographs. Dad tried to approach her, but she recoiled against the wall. She refused to look at Elise, kept her eyes locked on me or fixed on the floor. When Elise stepped closer, Mom began humming loudly, like she was trying to drown out Elise's very existence. I knelt down beside her, careful not to invade her space. I asked her to come back to the hospital with us, told her we were worried, that we wanted her safe. She shook her head, still humming. Then she reached into her pocket and pulled out a small orange bottle. Prescription pills. My stomach dropped. She said she'd been saving them, sneaking them past the nurses one at a time. She'd known this day would come, that Elise would eventually find me, that the evil one would return to finish what she'd started. I told her Elise wasn't evil, that she was my twin, my sister, that she'd never hurt anyone. Dad was on the phone with 911 in the next room. I could hear him giving the address. Mom heard it too. She glanced at the pill bottle, then back at me. And then she asked, "Do you want to know the truth? The real truth? Why I did what I did?" I nodded. I didn't trust myself to speak. Elise slowly lowered herself to the floor across from us. Mom flinched again, but she didn't hum this time. She said it had started before we were born. She'd had dreams, terrifying, vivid dreams, of twins battling inside her, one fighting to protect, the other trying to destroy. She said the moment we were born, she knew which one was which. She said she tried to tell the doctors, but they just gave her medication that made her thoughts feel heavy, distant. She told us she would watch baby Elise in the crib, convinced she could see something dark flickering behind her eyes. She said she'd catch Elise staring at me with an expression no infant should have. Sometimes, she claimed, she'd find Elise's crib empty, her tiny body somehow standing over mine, watching me sleep, despite being too young to even crawl, much less stand or climb.
It was horrifying, listening to her describe these hallucinations as if they were memories, as if they were truth. In her mind, she had saved me. She genuinely believed she had protected me from something evil. She looked at Elise again, just for a moment, and her face changed, softened. She said she had never hated her, that in her mind, the real Elise had already been taken over by something dark before she was even born. The separation hadn't been punishment, it had been mercy. She believed that if Elise was raised far away from me, maybe the darkness wouldn't grow. Maybe Elise could even have a normal life. It was twisted, terrifying logic, but I could finally see the full shape of the world she lived in all these years. To her, she wasn't being cruel. She was saving us, both of us, in the only way she could. Then I heard sirens in the distance. Mom heard them too. She looked down at the bottle again. But I reached out and gently took it from her hand. She didn't fight me. She just looked drained, hollow, like something had finally run out. The paramedics and police arrived minutes later. They loaded her onto a stretcher and took her back to the hospital, but this time to a higher security psychiatric unit. The doctor later told us she would likely be committed to long-term care. Her delusions were too severe, too resistant to treatment for her to live independently again. That was 3 weeks ago. Elise went back to Oregon after a few days, but we talk constantly. She's planning to move closer, not the same city, but nearby enough that we can visit regularly. Her adoptive parents have been incredible through all of this. They even reached out to Dad, offered to meet halfway so we could all.
They offered to have dinner together. Just one big, complicated, broken family trying to figure out how to heal. Dad and I talk more now. I'm still angry, still hurt, but I'm trying to understand. He was 24 when all of this happened, the same age I am now. I can't imagine facing what he faced. He made the wrong choice, but I'm starting to see there were no good choices. Only damage control, only fear. I visit Mom twice a week. Sometimes she's lucid, sometimes she's not. On her better days, she can look at pictures of Elise and me together without flinching, without slipping into panic. She'll never fully accept that her delusion wasn't real. The doctors say that's not how fixed delusions work. But with the right medication and therapy, she's starting to live alongside a reality that contradicts the one in her head. On one of my visits, she told me something that keeps echoing in my mind. She said, "I gave you a ghost for a sister because I thought it was safer than the alternative." In her fractured world, that made sense. She thought she was protecting me from something horrible, and in doing so, she stole everything. She stole half my life. She stole my sister, my identity, my sense of who I was, where I came from. All those years I felt incomplete. I was incomplete. The hardest part is knowing she'll never fully understand what she did. She'll never grasp the magnitude of what she took from us. Elise and I are planning a trip together, just the two of us, somewhere new, somewhere quiet. We're trying to make up for lost time. Even though we know we can never reclaim the 24 years that were taken from us. Sometimes I still wake up and wonder if it was all a dream, if Elise is still just a ghost I imagined in my head. Then she'll text me something only she would know, something only a twin would understand, and I remember. She's real. She's alive. She's been alive this whole time. Dad told me recently that, when I was very young, he used to take me to visit Elise in secret, just a few times, before Mom found out and threatened to hurt herself. I was too young to remember, but he has one photo of us, toddlers, holding hands, both in matching overalls. We looked happy, normal, not like children destined to grow up separated by lies and fear. I asked Elise if she remembered any of it. She didn't. We were too young. Another thing Mom took from us, not just our childhood together, but even the memory of it. The doctors say Mom's condition is rare, but not unheard of. Postpartum psychosis affects a small number of new mothers. In some cases, untreated, it can spiral into long-term delusional disorder. Dad should have insisted on treatment. The doctor should have recognized the severity sooner. The system should have done better. But it didn't. It failed all of us. Mom will likely never leave psychiatric care. Her delusions are too deeply rooted, too resistant to therapy.
In her mind, she's still protecting me from something terrible. She still believes she made the right choice. And maybe that's the most heartbreaking part of all. She destroyed our family thinking she was saving it. The last time I visited, she was having a relatively good day. She looked at a photo of Elise and me, sitting together, smiling, and for the first time, she didn't flinch. She didn't whisper, didn't hum, didn't cry. She just looked at it for a long moment. Then she said, "You look happy together." Not afraid, not angry, just an observation. A tiny crack in the wall, a small, trembling ray of light.